Well, we've made it to the home stretch. We've finished all of the blue squadron, all of the sort of Earth Forces cards. Every blue card in the game we've gone through. We've gone through the Masters deck, we've gone through the New Generation deck, and we're finally down to the last two real decks in the game, both the purely Zentradi focused decks. Both of these last two decks are just going to be 50 card decks. They're not 2-player starters like some of those other ones were. And let's just kind of get right into it and take a look at what these Zentradi's are all about. The only time we've seen them so far is in the 2-player starter review. So let's see what this has to offer. It does say we've got 30 common, 15 uncommon, 5 rares, just like all of them do. This gives you Azonia, Mariah, Quadranos, and brand new Vessel cards. As we know from some of the other ones, Vessel cards aren't new as far as where we're at in the reviews, but this was the third deck that would have came out. It would have came out mirroring this one. So let's get right into it. Okay, so we've got a couple of colorless action cards here. We've seen one other one of these in the Masters deck, but it's Fuel Leak. Restriction can only be played during the proto phase. Mecha cards cost 1 more point to mechanize this turn. That's pretty strong, actually. Play this during the turn when you're playing your energy, and all cards cost 1 more to play. Or at least mechas do, which is the main thing that you're going to be playing. This isn't a bad card. It kind of does make sense that it's an uncommon. That's kind of the rarity I would give that, just based on that effect. Well, let's see what else it's got to offer. Showdown. You must control a Zentradi unit. Your target unit must move to the battle zone to defend against your attacking unit. Oh, that's really cool. This is actually a really good card. You just, as long as it's at least turn 3, you can pick one of your opponent's cards and it has to defend against you. That's a really good way to get rid of specific threats. That's a really cool card. Spacefold. You must control a Zentradi vessel. Send your Zentradi unit from the battle zone to the base zone only during the mobilize phase. Only during the mobilize phase is a little strange, but it kind of makes sense. This essentially just means that you attack with a unit on your turn. During your opponent's turn, during the mobilize phase, you play this card to bring your units back to your base, and then you can send them back out again to defend as well. That's not actually a bad card. It gives you a lot of extra defense. We've got Azonia herself. Other units with female Zentradi pilots get +1 weapon while Azonia is in the battle zone. As an action, search your deck for Mariah, reveal it, put it in your hand, shuffle your deck. She is a 1/1/1 unit herself. As we mentioned with the 2-player starter deck, the Zentradi they're giants, you know? So they are big enough to be their own unit as well. So you could play her as a unit that could attack and fight for 1/1/1. Or if she is piloting a ship, then she gets +1/+1 or she gives +1/+1 to whatever she's piloting. But as an action to search your deck for Mariah, reveal it, put it in your hand, shuffle your deck. This is a pretty cool card. You get 2 copies of it. Female Zentradi officer. Oh, good. They do give you all 3 copies of this. That's awesome. It's non-solo, so you can have all 3 of them in play, but it's not basic, so you can't have more than 3. 1 cost, 1/1/0. Again, that's kind of a basic 1 cost unit, but to give +1 as a pilot as well is good. Search your deck for Azonia, reveal it, put it in your hand, and shuffle your deck. That's for a card that you're going to have multiple copies of to be able to go get your Azonia. That's a pretty good combo. Female Zentradi basic. This is the one I was talking about. This is sort of what I was getting at. This is your literal turn 0 pilot play. It's a 1/0/1, gives +1. Basic, you can have as many as you want. Target attacking Azonia's forces unit gets +1 weapon. Now, the one thing to be careful about with Zentradi's is that these, while they are units, they are characters. So you can still only play 1 character a turn per the rules of the game. So you have to make sure to not stack your deck with too many of these pilots that aren't just units, because you'll only be able to play 1 unit a turn where your opponent may be playing like 5 or 6. So these are really, really strong, but you have to be careful with that. Female Zentradi warrior. Azonia's forces basic, gets +1 weapon while attacking. 1/1/0. And Azonia's forces gets +1 weapon. That's a decent little action. But really, this is just 1-1-0 becomes a 2-1-0 if we have Azonia in play. If this is piloting something, then I guess it doesn't give a bonus. But so I guess this one would be more intended to be an actual unit. Okay, well, I don't think that's bad, but I don't know if it's great. Though a 0-cost 2-1-0 isn't bad by any means, especially for a basic. Mariah showing up a second time. We saw her on the side of good earlier. With Mariah, it's a 2-2-0 3-cost. It gives +2. Discard a card. Target mecha pilot must defend against this pilot and mecha. That's really strong as well. It's just kind of like that action card earlier. If you put this thing into a suit and then it has to defend, or it has to be defended against. That's really strong. If you were to run this along with, I don't know if she would actually count since she's just Mariah. I was gonna say if you run her with the Mariah's VF1J, this is a great card, but I think that one requires a specific Mariah Sterling. I'd have to look. That might be some fun deck building. Quadrano Zentradi Armor, getting into our first actual units. 3-cost 3-3-2, can only be piloted by female Zentradi pilots. You got plenty of those. Gets +1 weapon while it battles a unit with a male pilot, which also makes sense. The the Earth Forces decks are almost entirely male, so that makes a lot of sense too. This is a pretty good card, especially for a common. Quadrano Ace, 3-cost 3-3-2, can only be piloted by a female, gets +1 weapon when piloted, so 4-3-2, great stats for a 3-cost, plus the pilot probably gives it a stat buff as well, so this is probably a pretty beefy unit. Target female pilot gets +2 weapon bonus, decent action too. Quadrano Basher, let's see what we got here. 1-cost 0-2-1, can only be piloted by females and Zentradi pilots, while your proto level is 3 or less, so you have 3 or less total energy. This unit gets +X weapon and +X armor, +X and -X, where X is your proto level. So this would be a decent, this is like early game aggro card. If you were to run a deck with this, you'd want to run 3, and you'd want to see them as soon as possible. Well, your proto level is 3 or less, targets and try to get +X, -X, where X is your proto level. Same action. So it's a good way to, as a buff, if you're just trying to go for game or trying to take out a big unit, you can just slap this down, give something a huge buff, and try to deal with that. Quadrano Blitz. 1-cost 2-1-2. You must control a Zentradi female pilot. Can only be piloted by a Zentradi female pilot, so that works great. Unit gets +2 weapon while not defended. So if you don't block this, it's a 4-1-2. This works great with, especially as an early 1-cost card. You get a turn 0 pilot out on the board. Again, then play this as here's your 1 energy. You play this on turn 1. These together make for a pretty beefy way to score a bunch of points turn 1. I like that card a lot. Quadratic Burn. You must control Zentradi female. Can only be piloted by Zentradi female. When it attacks, you gain a battle point. That is awesome. 2-2-2-2. Your opponent has to deal with this card immediately. But every single time this card swings, you just gain a point. That's super cool. And as an action, both players gain a point. That's also cool. I don't know how often you use an action. Sometimes you might just be like, well, I need to win. Quadrano Counter Strike, 2 copies of this. Can only be piloted by a female pilot. Whenever it is attacked, you gain a battle point. That's really cool. The fact that it's got it's straight 2s again, means that this is a decent intercept unit, which is great. It means that your opponent is going to, if they want to get another unit off the board, if they want to try to deal with this guy, then they have to, you have to get points scored against you. Or against themselves. That's a really cool card. Plus you block with him, they're attacking this guy, now you gain a point. Pretty strong. Quadrano First Strike. 1-cost 5-1-2. You can only requirements you control an Azonia's Forces pilot. Can only be piloted by a female pilot. Oh, gets minus X weapon where X is your proto level. Okay, so this card's actually really cool. It loses it loses power based on your, oh, whoa. That's actually even cooler. So this card is great at the very beginning of the game, but it gets worse as you get more proto level. Huh. That's awesome, actually. Target mecha gets +2 weapon. That's pretty strong. So yeah, I guess this is... I mean, we were talking about that one guy earlier being like a turn 1 card, but this card, you could get 5, 6, 7 points like right away. That's huge. That'd be really tough as far as like deciding decks, because you'd want to run 3 so you see it right away. But on the other hand, after turn like 2, it's not great. Huh. That's a quandary. I would this card's really interesting, and I will definitely do something with it. But this deck is really interesting. Quadrano Kamikaze, 2 cost, 5/05. Mecha cannot intercept or defend at the end of the battle phase. Destroy it. Okay. So this is literally Kamikaze. You literally play this card, send it out, and hope it dies. You know, because it's gonna die anyway. Use this to blow up a specific unit, or to just score a chunk of change points real fast. That's pretty cool, actually. I like this guy. Quadrano Mariah. Oh, Mariah is specifically her own unit. 4 cost 4/3/2. Decent stats. Solo makes sense. Can only be piloted by Mariah. Also makes sense. Send a proto card to the discard pile. This gets +1 weapon and +2 armor. That is also pretty strong. It works in combo well with the other guys who get minus X for your proto cards. So if you send one to the discard, this gets a buff, then your other guys permanently go up by 1. That's pretty cool. This is a good card. It's rare, if that makes sense. Quadrano Overkill. Focus. 3 cost 6/2/2. Requirement discard a card. It can only be piloted by Zentradi female pilot. Still, a pretty good card, actually. These guys having a ton of attack is cool. They're easy to kill because their defense is low, but they do a ton of damage. That could add up really fast. That's really interesting. I'd like to see this deck played. Quadrano Recall. 3 cost 3/3/2. I talk about their huge stats as we come up to like a very basic 3-stat card. As an action, discard a card. This unit may return to the base zone. Oh, that's very good. That's very strong. Yeah, 2 copies of him. He's only doing the mobilize phase, so it's like that action from earlier where you attack with it, then you discard a card, bring it back, and be able to defend with it as well. We've got Quadrano Smasher, 2 copies of him. 1 cost 1/1/2. Can only be piloted by Zentradi female pilot. While your proto level is 3 or less, the unit gets +2 weapon. That's also pretty good. This is a nice little group buff. I like that guy. Quadrado Thrasher. Okay. 1 cost 1/1/2. Can only be piloted by Zentradi female pilots. While its proto level is 3 or less, this unit gets +1 weapon. Okay, so it really wants you to have the low proto level there. Oh, kitty, be gone, please. That's actually really cool, and it makes sense too with the Zentradi cards being as cheap as they are normally. It makes sense to have like low overall energy. This is interesting. I keep saying that interesting. I've actually never taken this deck out of the box other than to just scan the cards into the PDF, and I didn't read what they did at the time, so I haven't ever actually like looked at this. This is, well, for lack of a better word, it's interesting. Quadrano VX 2/2/2 can only be piloted by a female. Gets +1 weapon for each vessel you control. Okay, so this could, well, as we get into vessels, this could really beef up pretty well too. That's a neat unit. It gives a unit with a pilot +1/+1. Also a good action. It's a solid card. All right, we got 3 vessels to round this out here. 5 cost command ship Azonia. 15/15/1. You have to control Azonia. Advance. Send a proto card to the discard pile. Works with the rest of the things. That makes sense. If you're the active player, Gain a battle point for each proto card you control, 1 time. Okay, that is actually pretty cool. Just score, you know, just send this to the front. You could, I mean, even if you did this on turn 5, send a proto card to the discard pile, send this forward, you're still scoring, what, 5? 4? It's pretty good. Destroy or resupply, advance and one of your proto cards to the discard pile. Okay, this is starting to make more sense. 10-10-1, draw a card. Not a great thing as far as the drawing a card. We talked about this with one of the other decks where just drawing a card isn't that great since you draw 3 every turn. But being able to get rid of one of your proto cards does work really well with the rest of the game's function, or with the rest of this deck's function of keeping your proto count low. So that's not actually a bad choice, being able to just up your hand and kind of hand sculpt the specific cards that you're going to be cycling into your discard pile. And then finally, Destroyer Support. 3 cost 12-12-1. Requirement, you have to control Azonia. Okay. Advance for levels 3 or less. All of your Azonia's forces units get +1 weapon. This is the one I was expecting. Zentradi have a lot of these, like your everything gets plus something. I was expecting these. This is a really cool card, and it really, I think, is going to be, if you were to run a couple of these, I think would be the thing that will set that over the top, and can really start buffing those guys into really huge numbers. Well, these 50 card decks always tend to go a little faster, or at least this blue squadron and this one did. There's just multiple copies of cards. One thing I love about these 2 decks specifically is you get 2 to 3 copies of most of the cards. So even just with just 1 copy of the deck, it's pretty playable. But if you were to buy 2, then you'd have play sets of everything except the vessels in this one, for example. Whereas like the SDF1, as you saw, like that deck had a ton of 1-ofs, and that's really annoying where you'd have to buy 3 copies of it. Or with that Masters deck where you have basics that you get 1 of, and you'd have to buy, 5, 6, 7 copies of that deck to have a slew of the basics. That's really annoying. This is nice. This is a great way. This is like living card game style where it's like, all right, cool, I bought a playset. Great choice. If you're going to buy a deck, I haven't played these against each other, but these feel the most complete of the 2 decks so far. Anyway, this deck, I'm actually really excited to look into this Zentradi stuff a little bit more. I naturally, as the main characters with the Veritechs and stuff, this stuff interested me more right out of the gate. But this is a really cool deck and does a lot of cool stuff. I think you can get some huge like Alpha Strike numbers in where you get guys like 6, 7, 8, 9 power really early in the game. Now they do have really low defense, so they're easy to kill, but still being able to push that much damage, these could be really good swarmy aggro decks. I'm interested to see how that works. Well, thanks for hanging out. We have literally 1 deck left to go. I guess not literally. We have 1 deck left to go that is an actual official retail release deck. It is the Breetai's Forces deck, the last of the Zentradi cards. And then our last review, we're just going to go over the beta deck that came out before the game was even officially released. This game was never even officially released. It never even got barcodes. But before they made it even to this point, they had a beta deck that you could get, which was a sort of altered version of the 2-player starter deck. And we'll take a look at that, see how cards differed. Cards look a lot different. They have different text, different art. The paper was different. It's very unique to look at. Well, thanks for hanging out. We'll see you next time.